At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Sean McNulty of the Wake Up Newsletter here at the Ankler, here on the Jersey Shore on Thursday, October 24th. I'm joined by Richard Rushfield and Elaine Lowe, who may not be a tennis champion on the courts, but she still is in our hearts. Elaine, how you doing there, kiddo?
Thank you. We had a great time. It was our team from LA repping SoCal against 16 other teams from across the country. So it was a good time. But I really enjoyed hearing you guys try to figure out where I was last week on the pod.
Well, we knew it was tennis.
She's at a tennis thing?
That's pretty good for us. That's pretty good for us.
She's taking 2 days off to, play tennis?
I didn't want to say anything that was false, Elaine, so I just kept it very broad. So, there's tennis involved, and she's not here right now. So that was the extent of it. And I didn't know how it was going either, so I didn't want to have any spoilers there. So hope you had fun. Sounds like it was a good time, Elaine.
Hey, we made it to the national championships. It's the Super Bowl of rec tennis.
You're the national tennis champion?
We're in 16th place.
To be clear,
we're the 16th best team in the country.
16 of 16, but we were among the 16, and that's the important takeaway there, Richard. Well, and Richard, I was sorry to read this week that your rightful ascension to the top of the Disney throne has to wait another 15 months. Did I get this right? Or are you going to wait this out, or are you just going to take that job at Netflix instead? What are you going to do here?
Mere formalities.
Mere formality. I don't know about this.
I've been given my key to the executive washroom, and I can make myself at home anytime I wish.
But what does the snack room look like, Richard?
At Disney, we're going to see some changes coming on in 2026. I'll tell you that right now.
That's it's not too much of an emphasis on the healthy snacks.
Yeah, I don't think Bob Iger's a big snack guy. I got to say right now, I don't think that's a real. I would say that would be a definite change in policy if Richard took over.
They're going to learn about the words "Little Debbie's" there. So,
cross branding, very impressive. Of course, referring to the Disney Corporation announcing that they'll be picking a new CEO, Richard, in early 2026. At this point, that's something. Or so. Ish. They also announced that former Morgan Stanley honcho and current Disney board member James Gorman is going to take over the board come January. He is, of course, more importantly, I guess, also leading the succession committee on the board there as well. So, Richard, total shot in the dark here, but I thought you might have a thought or two on this one. I don't know.
So all the write-ups about it made very clear what this means is that the board is taking control. The board is entirely in control. James Gorman, very serious person from a bank. He's going to be running the show, and Bob Iger has nothing to do with it.
None of these Hollywood people. We have real bankers in here now, Richard. Forget about it.
I think the Wall Street Journal account even made clear that he has no relationships with any member of the board. He doesn't even know these people. They wouldn't.
Oh, of course not. No. Why would Bob Iger know the board? No,
they wouldn't even recognize each other in public. If these board people were allowed into Toscana, he wouldn't even know who they are.
Not at all.
So yeah, just like he had nothing to do with it when he came back, and he had nothing to do with it when he left last time, and he had nothing to do with it. It's all just the board. So. You can take away from that, as most people did, that the board has asserted control, or that someone really wants you to think the board has asserted control.
Right, one of two options there. Yeah, exactly. Also, so we're here in end of October. They again put we'll say roughly, maybe February. Well, I'll just say February 2026, so somewhere in there. This is after they've been theoretically evaluating people for this whole time period, Richard. I mean, it's not like, they've had a whole year here where they've had Iger extended his contract to end of 2026. And I was like, yep, succession is job one. I think he said, I'm nothing I obsess more over, or something like that. Richard, was that his quote?
Yes, I think he said, I am, to say I am obsessed with it is an understatement.
Exactly. Maybe not obsessed enough if they need another 14 months to figure this out. This is a little obviously, they're going outside. There's been 4 candidates. The candidates have not changed internally in this whole time either.
And these people work for them.
Right.
The board has
They might know them
access
already.
to their HR files and annual reviews, and presumably could call in their direct reports and say, so Dana, has she been a good boss? And presumably nothing is going to come out about your longtime employees that you don't know already
Hopefully,
in another 16 months.
Right.
So,
Right, like, what don't you already know about these 4 people you've been working with for years and years?
Yeah. And you pretty much know how they function and what their strengths and weaknesses are. So to announce that these are your 4 candidates, and then to, who happen to be your very top executives,
Right.
and then say, oh no, not just yet. And
we need 14 more months to think about this. Yeah.
Well, doesn't that point to the idea that they might be looking very seriously at external candidates when you broaden out the timeline by that much?
I think it points to the idea that they're looking at nobody. That they're looking at.
Well, there's this. Look, Richard, you pointed this out. We talked about this. That does open up quite a window for other transactions to potentially transpire here.
Exactly.
Oh, are we going back to the whole Disney Apple thing? Is this where this is leading?
That's
your
where
theory,
it all
your big
leads,
theory.
yes. And we have an election coming up, which will
True.
presumably unlock the long-awaited consolidation time that's
Right,
coming.
that everybody's talking about. Yeah, the deal-making period. So that's out there.
There's two big questions that remain over Hollywood. What the hell is Apple doing here? And what is Disney going to do about their cable problems?
I think the other I think Paramount and WBD have a bigger question on that one, Richard. I would say, but it's a question.
What
at
are
Disney.
all of them going to do?
Well, collectively.
Oh, wait, what cable problems? Well, define the cable problems.
And that you have a declining revenue business. That's the core of your entertainment revenue.
But
and,
like you were
yes.
alluding to just now, Sean, when you compare it to some other conglomerates that have big cable assets, I mean, Disney is hardly the most in decline there.
They all have to answer it, and Disney too, and Disney being the biggest, Disney's answer is the biggest. And so those two questions, like what is Apple doing here and what is Disney going to do about it, they could both have one answer very easily.
I don't think Apple wants to get in the cable business, but I still have it anyway.
Can you
That's a separate
Apple having a linear broadcast network.
Yeah,
no one's getting into the cable business.
Well, if you're buying Disney,
they're all getting out of the cable business, but Apple could be your path out of it.
Mostly, Richard, I loved your column this week on Disney Succession and the slow decline of your sanity through it as you consider all of these succession options and just how much it's like tweaking at you. If our listeners haven't read this, you really ought to, especially with the current motivations of Bob Iger ranked.
Yes,
which
why are we waiting for this?
I would not want to repeat, but I would not be able to do it justice.
There are quite a few. There are about 12, a list of 12. He's fine-tuning his farewell tweet, which, that can take you a long time, Richard. Listen, that's a very important part of the equation.
Or number 7, if the succession planning slows down below 50 miles an hour, the bus explodes.
I like the speed callback. That was a good one. Yeah, I recommend checking all those out there. You can read it in Richard's column with theankler.com.
I'll tell you how this absolutely does not end. Bob Iger, he likes drama. He likes surprises, everybody says. And he is obsessed with his legacy and the moving forward in the final chapter of this. And so this does not end with, and here I'm passing it off to, and now I hand it off to another executive. Good luck, new executive.
So the can't replace Bob Iger theory. All right, then that's Richard's take there. I will say, with this timeline, so again, Iger's contract goes through 2026. They said this choice will happen in early 2026. That leaves less than a year for whoever, if someone does come into this job, Richard, and we'll leave your thought there to the side, but that's not a lot of time to sit in that role and meet the street and do all the stuff. They're not leaving a very large window here. Again, that also implies is Bob Iger going to hang around after 2026? And it's like, we see what happened there last time. And I went back in the history books there, Elaine, back to when Iger came into the top seat. He was a COO for 4 years at Disney. He was the number 2 to Eisner before he officially got the keys, So he had 4 years in that role, being on every earnings call and being there next to Michael Eisner. And, then that's, when they came in, Eisner left under different circumstances. But This has none of those markings. So that was just the timing there is just, you're kind of jamming this in there, Elaine.
Look, we're going to have a new American president before we have a new CEO of Disney. Right. So that's where we
are. The saga's now on a 2-year mark. 2 years, next month is a 2-year mark of Bob Iger's return. So anyway, I will note also just something I've just been noting little drips and drabs of, Elaine, in the wake of the past few weeks and really collectively put together. Richard, that C-suite genius of Bob Iger in 2024 is really coming down to charge more and hope that doesn't piss a lot of people off.
Oh, how much more am I going to be paying for Disney Plus, Sean?
Well, those price hikes went into effect last week for Hulu and Disney Plus. So if everybody check your credit card bills out there, everybody, you're likely paying more for Hulu and Disney Plus. Richard, I'm sure you're right on top of that.
And the parks are...
Well, the parks I'll get to in a second. That's my last one. But I will say there's the streaming, even on premium video on demand, the home rentals, Elaine, of movies. You can rent the movies at home. They've been charging $25, which has been quite a bit above the normal $20 that most other movies have charged in that area. Universal's also doing that a little bit, so a little bit of a price hike there on the PVOD. They also cut Apple out of the equation on subscribing for apps, so now you have to sign up if you're a new subscriber to a Disney streaming service, you have to do so via a Disney website. You can't do so via the Apple Store because they don't want Apple taking 30% of their money anymore, so they're clawing that money back. And yeah, the price hikes, at the theme parks, Anaheim and Orlando, that are going up kind of across the board. My favorite one is they're testing out a new $400 a day Lightning Lane Premier Pass.
$400 a day
per person.
It's replacing the guide. It's not the Fast Pass so much as it's a unguided. It gets you to the very front of...
oh, you better. For $400 a day, you better get to the very front.
I'm going to have to dip into my kids' college fund to take them.
Without the reservations or anything. It's
this is the bougiest of bougie passes, and that is per person.
The guide, I believe, I think it was $10,000 a day for your
$10,000 a day. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
how much. I think that's how much.
Yeah. So unless you're going to leave the kids and nanny on the side there, Elaine, you're looking at least $1,200 a day to cut all the lines at a theme park for 3 people. Much less say you have 3 kids and a mom and a dad, and you have that's going to be $2,000 at Disneyland for the day. This is. Look, the money's out there. People will pay it. But really,
that's insane. That becomes so inaccessible to your average American.
And yet, tens of thousands of average Americans will be there every day paying it.
Yeah. And waiting on an hour-long line, and
they will sell out.
That's what Iger's counting on, certainly, Richard. So he may not be wrong, but price hikes, and this is all coinciding, Elaine. This is it's the Q1 of their fiscal year in Q4. So the 2-year anniversary of Bob Iger, there'll be a lot of money in the door, a lot more money in the door at Disney, coincidentally, because business is going so great. But if you look underneath it, it's probably because they're just charging more for most of their products. But Elaine, I'm sure most of that money is also going to the writers in Hollywood. Is that correct? for Disney TV shows? You had a look inside Disney in a much different capacity this week, namely what kind of TV series they're looking for across, quite a few labels there at the Mouse House. Where should we start? I guess maybe good old ABC. What do you got going on, Elaine?
That's right. It's part 2 of our multi-part series looking into what TV buyers are looking for from sellers. So, I talk to agents and writers and producers about this and try to get a sense from them of what are these streamers and networks asking for. And Disney, there's a little bit of waiting for the dust to settle right now because, they just had a reorg over at ABC and Hulu. They consolidated their scripted comedy and drama exec teams. And then over on the studio side, ABC's signature was basically absorbed into 20th TV. And a lot of this is we've talked about this before, feels a little bit overdue after the Disney-Fox merger on the studio side. So it's not terribly surprising. But at the same time, this means that
but who has green light power, who that.
Yeah, there's a lot of who makes the decisions, who should I go talk to,
whose calls do I ignore and whose calls do I take? Yeah, exactly.
And at ABC, as with any broadcast network, it's you've got a limited amount of space on the schedule.
Good old 4.5 hours of scripted TV on the fall schedule, right, Elaine?
Yeah, on the fall schedule, Abbott Elementary is the only scripted comedy there. And then there are 2 Ryan Murphy shows, Dr. Odyssey and 911. And then you've got, obviously, Grey's and that new show, High Potential. But that's pretty much it. So it's I've been told there's basically a very tight opportunity structure there.
And they just also put Monday Night Football back on every Monday night. So that even that schedule's now out the door Hour. So that's, they just replaced that this week too, Elaine. So
yeah, but if they're looking for shows, it's going to be good old procedurals, your medical shows, your legal shows. So nothing real surprising. And given the year-round development cycle too, like I've been told that ABC has said that it will take pitches any time of the year outside of the week of Christmas. So they're open for business 51 weeks out of the year.
Look at that, Richard. That's a full year policy there. So they just made a deal with Rachel Bloom, I saw, for a comedy, a pilot deal this week. So they're a little, and the Tim Allen comedy's coming mid-season. So there is some comedy.
The comedy market has been really tough. It's like I just constantly hear like there's some movement, but it's just very tough to get in the door right now. Like over on Hulu, they've had a lot of success with shows like Only Murders in the Building or like Nine Perfect Strangers. And that's basically like as a streamer, that's where you kind of take like some of your edgier stuff. But what I heard from like multiple agents is Hulu really wants YA. They're very into trying to fill a hole for young adult programming, but that also YA is more of like a vibe than like a mandate.
It's a mindset. Can I be YA or am I? No, is that not?
What agent was like, well, YA doesn't just mean teen. It could also mean 20-something or even early 30-something. And I was like, that doesn't mean anything anymore then, does it?
Elaine, do you feel YA? That's ever getting into your territory.
Yeah. Maybe I'm YA
Congratulations. You are now at Hulu, you are YA. So there you go.
But they just want that like aspirational vibe, I think, is what they're looking for.
Don't we all? So I heard Amazon's also looking for this. Hulu has that one, was it Tell Me Lies? Does that count as YA, I guess? Was that show?
Tell Me Lies has done really well. And I think that's sort of the impetus for like, let's get a little more YA on the schedule. But I think it's so interesting that YA is in such big demand right now across places like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, when it's like two of the biggest places that used to host YA. It's like, what is the CW anymore? And like Freeform is basically Hulu.
Yeah. Well, kids have all that money, Elaine. So listen, you go where the money is in the economy.
And how much is Hulu going to cost me from now on?
Yeah, exactly. Who's paying for this Hulu that they're watching? So over at FX, it seems the mandate is just give us your good scripts. And
just the good scripts,
just
easy,
the good scripts.
Easy.
Right.
But they still like their auteur-driven projects, their effects, they're voicey, they're edgy. But do they necessarily want another The Bear? Jury's out, but I think most people are like, probably not. They're not looking for as one agent told me, like, they're not being like, bring us your vibey, are they comedy, are they drama, half hours that release a feeling of ennui.
Or a feeling of ennui?
Yeah.
My interesting. All right, but a lot of agents sound like that's still probably one of the top places to bring your show. They get behind what they do by. Elaine.
Oh yeah, I mean that's basically like the crown jewel, right? Like that's the place you want to have a show because if you're going to have a show on FX, they're going to throw their full weight behind it because they're so selective about it. And then meanwhile, like you look at a place like Disney Plus, which is still a little bit of an enigma in terms of like what they would want if they ever took an outside original pitch.
I was going to say, if you're not inside the house and the brands, I don't know, an original pitch at Disney Plus, I guess that would be an interesting.
Yeah, if you ever watch WandaVision, it's very much so like the town of Westview, very like walled off from outsiders by magic. They're always looking at the well of IP that they already have, obviously, with like, Marvel and Lucasfilm and Pixar and Disney Animation on that service. So I thought it was kind of interesting, though, that like if you look over at the Disney Channel part of it, I just thought it was funny that like one showrunner was like, okay, Disney Channel is hyper specific about what it wants, but that it can differ from season to season. But what they'll tell you is, like, as an example, like as a made up example, but they'll give you like a concept of maybe they'll be like a restaurant. Like, that's the theme. Give us a show about a restaurant.
It's called Cheers, wasn't it? No, that was a bar, I guess.
Cheers for the Disney Channel set.
Cheers for the Disney Channel. If you have that idea.
That just made me laugh, though. The idea that it's like restaurant.
Did they serve food
Do
at
something
Cheers?
with it.
Yeah, there's food at Cheers. Yeah, I think
there was a kitchen.
Yeah, not really talked about too much, but there were tables and things, yeah. Well, the restaurant was upstairs, Richard. Wasn't that the thing?
Yes, that's correct. People were waiting for their table.
The tables. Sorry, Elaine, we're just having a sojourn back to 1984 there for a second.
I can tell you're having a Gen X conversation over there. That's fine.
Which brings us to Hello, Larry.
No, God.
No.
Contractually obligated to bring it up.
No Hello, Larry pitches at Hello, Jane. I'm going to pitch that for Disney Channel now. It'd be great. Coming in from Richard Rushfield has an idea. But anyway, a lot of great details from Elaine there. You can catch all of what everybody's buying there inside the Mouse House in her series business column at theankler.com, and a couple of other good reads over there at The Ankler. ESG has a brand new read, hot off the presses here on Thursday, in defense of David Zaslav. I did not see that coming. I think I may need to do a little check-in on ESG, but consider me all ears, although he does call it a cautious defense. So you can read that there at The Ankler. And Eric Barmack had a great new Real AI column diving into what to do when AI comes knocking at your door with a deal in hand if you're a studio. I guess first make it an all-cash transaction, but you can see what advice Eric has over there at theankler.com. All right, coming up next, Nicole Laporte's going to join us for a look at what she discovered when she started asking around town about the effects of Hollywood's return to office policies as whatever normal has taken hold here, what the effects are on the various generations, on executive staff, on the creative, all the above, and the changes that still may realistically be ahead for Hollywood. It's not all still in stone, as she will tell us all about. We'll be back in a moment as I take a break working from home.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Hi, I'm Ashley Collins, and I write the Dealmakers newsletter for The Ankler. Dealmakers guides readers through the intricate workings of lawyers, agents, and bankers, with insights exclusive to The Ankler covering the fast-changing state of deals, film finance, M&A, and the new frontier of AI law. I also interview some of the biggest names behind the industry's headlines, the people moving the entertainment industry forward, one DocuSign at a time. Dealmakers comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler. So please join me by subscribing today at theankler.com.
Okay, so Ankler contributor Nicole Laporte rejoins us on the pod this week. Nicole, always great to have you back here on the podcast. Welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So return to office policies are still quite a hot button issue here in Hollywood. About 4.5 years since the outbreak of COVID, Amazon's probably gotten the biggest headlines as the company has put in a 5 days a week in office policy starting in January, which also conveniently serves as a nice way to perhaps trim the staff a little bit. Don't like it? Go somewhere else. But they're not the only ones looking at the effects of a few years of mixed policies at various sectors of the entertainment business. So what'd you see out there in Hollywood, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Like you point out, this is hardly a new issue, but I think Amazon's announcement was kind of this blaring, I don't know, just a siren that ripped through the industry because Amazon is such a big presence here. And then it was followed quickly, or what followed quickly on the heels of that was Lionsgate saying now they're going to ask their top executives to return to the office 5 days a week, starting also in January. So I think that kind of reignited the conversation. And so in just reaching out to talk to people, I mean, I think 4 years after lockdown, there's just this sense that there just hasn't been like a consistent policy across the industry. So you have like the agencies are all 5 days. Studios range from 3 to 4 days you have to be in. Some say specifically Monday through Thursday, some don't. The smaller production companies kind of come up with their own policies. Some of them are remote. So there's this very disjointed sense, about when to show up and how work's being conducted. And, there's definitely a generational divide. I think the quote unquote older crowd, who, as I say in the article, grew up on the Katzenbergian motto, if you don't show up to work on Saturday, don't bother coming in on Sunday. They're sort of like, what the hell is going on? Like, we all need to be here in the office. We all need to be schmoozing all the time. This industry's built on, just coming up with ideas over lunch or walking down the hall with someone, that Zoom has completely killed Hollywood's creative mojo. And then you have younger folks who, some of whom arrived in Hollywood on Zoom during COVID. They naturally communicate, more readily on text, on Zoom, over email. And so you're just hearing this kind of, there's a lot of noise behind the scenes as people still kind of feel that things haven't quite settled down. I mean, I talked to an executive at one major studio who's like, yeah, we talk about it all the time. Like, we would love to bring everyone back, but there's fear. Like, we don't want, this horrible backlash that we're seeing over at Amazon, where there's like tens of thousands of employees on the Slack channel, people threatening to quit. So there's this great sensitivity around it.
Yeah, but you had a lot of great anecdotes in the piece, but just what the reality like is for people who do come back into the office, even if it's a few days a week. You got half empty floors. Like what am I doing here? Is a great thing of like people holding Zoom meetings when they're all in the office. Like know, like people hearing like we're in the next office and we're literally on a Zoom together. What are we doing here? Kind of things. So even when you do get back to the office, I feel like even that's like how do we do this? Is even that's people who come in for a few hours. You would say like was it the grab a coffee? What was it? Coffee collection?
Badgers,
the coffee badgers coming in for a couple of hours. And so that's a day in the office. Like that's not what, so that also was a great picture of like, it's this, even when you do go into the office, it's not even what it was before, what the intent might be.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, look, there's certain things that aren't going to change. Like Zoom is a huge convenience. It's changed, work culture across the board. People do work effectively at home. I mean, I don't think there's any going back to, the 90s or early 2000s or whatever, or even say 2015. So I think it's just we're in this murky period of trying to work out, well, what does work and how do you hold people accountable? And when you're in a creative meeting, people feel very strongly like we need to have, it's just such a different energy to have people in a room as opposed to being like tiles on a Zoom call.
Yeah, totally. And so getting the agency world, which you said has been back 5 days a week, essentially as soon as they could have since COVID. And having learned at my first job was working at a management company. It was on, was on a desk, and you do learn just so much being there. And but this kind of like this generation almost, Elaine, where like there's this time where, as you said, it's been 4 years now. If you came into the business in this time, you don't even know anything any different. And everybody else is like, no, you're missing out on so much like in person. But I don't know.
That's got to be such a hard reversal, right? Like if you graduated and, I mean, first of all, the pandemic already messed with how you perceive the college experience to be. And then you come out into the working world and you're like, well, yeah, Zoom has become the norm. How do you try to shift into an environment where you're supposed to be there 5 days a week for like 8 hours a day? It just seems so contrary. It seems so old fashioned, which is weird because, the pandemic was only 4 years ago, but it must be so jarring.
Yeah. But like rolling calls and things, Nicole, like, and just understanding like how to read people, like that kind of intangibleness of is really a thing that you really can only get. You can't get that on Zoom that they were talking about in the piece.
Yeah. I mean, the agents in particular are very sensitive to this, or very, get very passionate
about. They
love
being in office.
They love the office.
They love to tell you like what we do isn't rocket science. We're not necessarily the smartest people, but it is true. Like so much of their job is just reading the room, leveraging relationships, knowing, what the guy down the hall or woman down the hall is working on. So I think they in particular feel like you really need to be in the office. And one agent I talked to was saying the kids or the younger agents who were on or hybrid or out of the office for that 1 year, like there's a difference. Like they feel that they don't quite, they're too comfortable on Zoom. They're not, they miss some mentorship really, just being able to. Yeah, the rolling calls thing is so funny because I mean, I don't even know. Does any other industry do this? Where
all the assistants have to sit in on every single one of their boss's calls? Yeah,
for like hours. Like they start rolling them at like 4 o'clock.
Like, do they do that on Wall Street at all? I don't know.
It's so interesting, but I guess it is a really great way to just observe.
As someone who was on that call myself, it's how I learned so much about the business, and it was it's invaluable, I will say, or even irreplaceable. The amount that you just hear, not just like knowledge, but just like, again, how to deal with people, whether that's a studio executive to a client, to a business affairs person, like, you just pick up so much on those interactions. And now people got used to making their own calls, Nicole, but apparently they learned their phones do work. They don't need someone to place their calls for them. So, they can get cut out of that equation.
So we had a chat yesterday on the Ladder, which is our new product for up and coming people in Hollywood, and we had a Substack chat inspired by your article, Nicole, and there were people talking about, I prefer a hybrid model, I prefer this and that, and I endeared myself as usual by suggesting if you're an assistant anywhere in Hollywood, your first job as an assistant, your number one job is to get out of being an assistant. As quickly as possible. Yeah. And you look around at your fellow assistants, And most of them aren't going to do that. Most of them are not going to make it to the next rank. So at some point, there's going to be an opportunity for promotion available. And yeah, you can stay at home a few days a week and work there. That promotion's probably going to go to the person who they've seen hustling the hardest and working the hardest, not the person who, really found a good way to have a work-life balance and let everyone know about how balanced their life is. And it's just like, are you okay getting passed over for those promotions while you wait for a better world that respects hybrid work to come about? And didn't get much response to that.
There wasn't a popular hot take on that one,
but that's the thing. I mean, there's what may be better for everybody, and when you're assistant, you're being thrown into a very competitive place.
Yeah.
So much of the conversation seems to be a divide of like, oh, the Gen Zs like are used to things a certain way and they're very like Zoom friendly, right? But Nicole, I wonder how many people that you talked to who were of millennial vintage were very on board with like working from home, because I got to imagine it's like if you have a family and, somebody was talking about like being able to do laundry while they're working, like there's a lot of other things that you can get done at home while you're still being effective at your job.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and I think, it's not like only the young folks want to stay on Zoom and everyone else, wants to go in the office. That's not true at all. I mean, for sure, there's one studio executive who's been there a very long time and it's just like, I'm so much more effective. I knocked out 4 Zooms this morning. I had lunch at my desk. And if I was on the lot and, I'd have 2 meetings, I'd have to walk across the lot, settle down. Maybe I'd get half the amount of meetings in. The lunch itself would take an hour to meet your colleague, walk off the lot.
Lunch takes a long time.
Lunch does take my LA trip in October. I'm like, yeah, lunch does take a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us really, who wants to go back 5 days a week?
Well, yeah, it is finding that mix. Yeah.
Well, I bet a big part of it too is if you surveyed everybody and asked everybody where they lived, like how much does the commute alone factor into that? If you have younger people who can't afford to live in West LA and who are living, far out in the valley, far out in San Fernando or in the SGV, then they're talking about, a 45-minute, hour-long commute. And I've talked to some of these support staffers who, can barely afford to pay for the gas that it requires to commute into the office 5 days a week. And, that's just so much of it. Like if you live like 10 minutes from the office, that's one thing, right? But if you've been forced to live somewhere in the periphery of Los Angeles, like, yeah, of course it's going to make more sense to want to Zoom in.
Yeah, no. And I did talk to someone who lives in Silver Lake, somewhere on the east side. And he was like, yeah, I mean, I'm considering moving to the west side, but all of his friends are on the east side. It's just like that's a big leap. And he's not quite sure what he's going to do. But it's like, he's spending like 2 hours in the car every day. I think another thing that came up in reporting, I didn't really get into this in the story, is just I talked to an agent who said, look, I grew up on Entourage. I got into this business because of Vincent Chase and the glamour and the money. And there was this sense up until recently that all that hustle was worth it. Like there were parties every night and there were, drinks and lunch and it was this great lifestyle. And if you weren't making money yet, you would make money, a lot of money very quickly. And pretty much all of the younger people I talk to, that is not how they feel. Like the glamour is so gone, or at least diminished. Yeah, the all this networky stuff, it's all also greatly diminished since COVID. Again, fewer lunches, fewer drinks. The money, are you going to make money? I don't know. Like, you're not, it's not like being an agent or a young agent 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So I think it all ties into like, if that shimmery reward is not quite, I don't quite see it, then really, why do I need to, then why hustle? Like the sort of equation doesn't quite exist the way it used to. And so it's like, yeah, well, 3 days a week is good for me, Well,
there's a greater focus on mental health and work-life balance too among the younger set that I don't recall experiencing when I was fresh out of college, and there was very just like I'm happy to be here mentality. I don't think potentially exists as much with Gen Z.
Yeah.
Yeah. As then you mentioned also that, there is no more drinks culture after work. It's maybe a dinner in your home. And, not that this business used to be a lot more fun. Like, I think, I don't know, there is that sense out there, Nicole, of just like, it's changed. And for whatever that's societal or, has to do with the entertainment business specifically, but there is that kind of shift of people recalling a time, this millennial or Gen X executives that just doesn't exist anymore. And it's not going to come back, even if you came back to the office 5 days a week, I think.
Yeah. And it's like, I think entertainment used to be like arguably the coolest job to have. And now it's like, well, why don't you go work at Twitch, go work at, some Silicon Valley
YouTube
company. So I think the whole package and the whole, just what you're entering into and what the reward is going to be has just shifted a lot.
Yeah, and this is all tied into the office, Nicole, which actually all these themes come back into it. But Elena will point out, just in terms of, you do a lot of job board reporting, from time to time and checking on that and what jobs are available. And it's always, if you're sending a resume and you're, good luck with that. It's like it's often still that recommendation, or back to Richard's point, if you don't have somebody calling on your behalf, forget about it.
Yeah, it's a relationships business, right? I mean, that's the refrain.
Yeah, and if you don't know somebody in person, that's a different relationship with someone than if you just like, oh yeah, they're great on Zooms all the time. Like, that's a different thing than if you're with them 3-4 days a week and have been there for 2 years. It's just a different dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that it's a judgment on it. It's just it's human nature, for lack of a better term, Elaine.
Yeah, but that's why the commute part of it popped up to me when I was reading Nicole's story of just how many people would gladly be in office 5 days a week if they actually lived within 5 miles of their office and didn't have to battle through LA traffic for an hour.
Yeah. Well, in New York, I mean, commuting in from a suburb is just, one of the life's greatest nightmares.
You're stuck on a train for an hour one way each way.
NJ Transit, going back and forth on the train or whatever it might be. So yeah, no one wants to go back to that. I think in the end, maybe, Nicole, a bit of it is flexibility, maybe a key here. Maybe if you're in most days, but I think, back to Elaine's point, the old days of you want to take a day off, you want 2 hours to go for a doctor, what are you, crazy? I think that attitude's gone, but maybe there's some mix of being in most days, but a little more understanding if you want to take a day, if you have a kid thing, or if you have things that you want to do, it's a little more understanding at this point, but maybe that's where it'll net out. But what do you see that's kind of ahead here going forward in 2025?
Yeah, I think just more than anything, a consistent schedule. I mean, I think if it's agreed across the board, you work Monday through Thursday in the office and Fridays at home, that's fine. But now, the way it is now, some companies are staggered. Again, some companies give employees the choice. And so I think what becomes demoralizing is, like you were saying earlier, you show up and you're the only one,
That's the worst of both worlds.
It is. It's
you
the
show
worst.
up 3 days a week and there's nobody in the office. Why are we doing
Zooms
this?
all day.
Yeah. So everyone just needs to grab hands and decide upon what is the work week going to look like, and give everybody Friday off. And, even that would just be an improvement.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, Nicole, is everybody has to be like an agent. So that's what you're trying to tell us. So follow the agencies. So it's a great read to check out at theankler.com. I will finish out here with a little more about that new letter program that Richard mentioned here at The Ankler, which is a members-only hub for, I'll say, early career entertainment professionals. So if you're relatively new here in Hollywood, New York, or wherever, and have some hustle, I suggest checking it out. You get a discounted Ankler subscription. You get access to exclusive events, some merch, which I'm told is a printout of Richard's 7-bean dip. So that's part of the merch there. It's very exciting. Something called AMAs with the Ankler staff, and I think since AMAs are the American Music Awards to me, I think that's Richard's going to serenade you with songs, which could be a part of it. Richard, is that in the offing?
We've got the Hello Larry theme song queued up round the clock.
That's on the podcast every week. We need exclusive content here, Richard.
No, AMAs are Ask Me Anything, and Sean, you're clearly not chronically online the way the rest of us are.
Clearly, I'm not. I think it's one. Yeah, for the guy who uses gifts every day. Yes, I'm not chronically online.
I can do the Facts of Life theme song also.
Oh. Okay, now that's exclusive content.
Yeah,
so, yes.
totally.
But,
keep that behind the paywall, Richard.
Behind the paywall. That's for ladder people only, Richard. So that's a good. Yes, you get access to hear.
Good, you take the bad.
All right, Richard. We'll save some for the
preview.
end of the podcast. Exactly. Yes, you get access to hear folks here at the Ankler. So, and there's also an event in New York on November 3rd at the Bell House in Brooklyn for our New York folks. So anyway, the link to apply to the ladder is in the show notes of this here podcast episode. All right, Nicole, thank you for joining this week. A great read there, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Richard, did you Slack me a note that you have hope for what happens after the election, or was that the Anglers' Matthew Frank pulling a prank on me and using your laptop? What was going on there?
No, I've been hacked, clearly.
I was like, this is not Richard slacking me at all right now.
I have hope that when the election is over, at some point we'll be able to not talk about the election.
I'll join that.
That's a grand
very
hope.
good.
Yes,
all right.
love that.
Yes.
But somehow I have a feeling it won't be quite that simple. But it's coming, and Hollywood is facing up to it. Today I spoke to a number of people and how they're thinking about the election and hanging in there, and people are pretty freaked out and worried about, for Hollywood in particular, what comes after, which could mean, is this the starting gun for the wave of consolidation we've waited for all these years?
Interesting. Okay. Well, you can check that out over at theankler.com. Richard's conversations around town. A little more pressing, I guess, is this weekend at the box office. We've the Oscar campaign, Richard, which is much more, of course, important than the election. I mean, listen, let's keep it on brand here. We have Conclave from Focus finally getting into theaters here, a new jolt of energy. We had Anora, the neon picture, came in limited release last weekend. That'll be a little bit wider this weekend, but definitely, Conclave, Richard, one of those titles that I've just seen nothing but pretty positive, constant buzz throughout the fall film festival season out there, and I'm excited to see it as well. So
yeah, I mean, a murder mystery in the Vatican looks up my alley. Haven't seen it yet. I would say the Oscar buzz is there, but somewhat muted from people who have seen it. So we'll see. I can't totally speak to that, but I know I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, checking a lot of boxes there. We'll see what America thinks this weekend. And Elaine, is Venom on your Marvel fandom punch card, or where does he lie?
Venom. Do we have another Venom movie coming out?
Oh boy, I guess we know where it is. There's our answer, ladies and gentlemen. So, okay, very good. Yes, we have a third Venom, which is tracking.
Thought we were on a second. Okay, well that's where I am on this.
That's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. This one's from Sony, tracking around $65 million, which is below the previous two installments by a margin. And of course, Richard, Sony spent the most on this movie of the three movies, so that's exactly how Hollywood math works, I think, right? You spend the most on the movie that's going to make the least, right?
Well, everybody's prices go. I mean, that's why shows go up the air, because your stars' prices don't fall during the course of it. So
that tends not to be how the deals go. So we'll see where that one comes in. And if you'll be at the Montclair Film Festival this weekend out there in North Jersey, Ashley Collins and I will both be there on Saturday. That's October 26th, doing respective panels in the afternoon. So definitely say hello if you're out there as well. I'll be the guy from Central Jersey who's not in Bon Jovi. So just to clarify which one is there. John, of course, will be there by my side or in spirit.
You're the one taking over for Clarence in the E Street Band, right?
Different acts there, Richard. Yeah, no, you're crossing Jersey Venn diagram. That's a whole different thing. I'm not even going to dive into that one in Jersey, so we'll leave it there.
Has Richard offended all of Jersey now?
Yeah, he might have offended some of our Jersey contingent, so I'll leave it that way. But
nothing but good things to say to the people of Jersey. I'm a big fan.
All fine people. We appreciate your support, Richard. But you can go to montclairfilm.org for the details there. And of course, you can go to theankler.com to subscribe to all newsletters and podcasts here at The Ankler. Just enter the old email address. Super easy. You can also reach us here at the podcast anytime at podcast@theankler.com and follow on the socials at The Ankler on your social platform of choice. Richard and Elaine, a pleasure as always to see you. With thanks to Nicole Laporte for joining as well. And a big thanks to you all for listening. We'll see you next time.